The film opens in 1969 and a man asks his neighbors if they have said the name. The woman admits her and one other man said the name, so he says sorry and grabs a shotgun. He kills the woman, then walks over to the man and asks if he told anyone else because someone is coming. The man says he told others, so the shotgun-touting man reluctantly goes and eliminates them all. Throughout the whole thing, he tells himself don't say it, don't think it. We then flash to present times and meet Elliot, his girlfriend Sasha, and John. The three have just moved into an off-campus house which has been abandoned for many years. They begin to get things situated and set up some old furniture which they found in the basement. Elliot and Sasha take the upstairs room, and at night Sasha hears the sound of coins falling but brushes it off. Later, Alito's brother Virgil visits the house and brings his wife and kids. They then throw a big party to celebrate them officially moving in. During the party, Virgil's daughter Alice escapes the chaos and ventures upstairs. She walks into Elliot's room and opens one of the miniature storage doors on the side. At the same time, the door across the room opens and something resembling a dog peeks its head out, but she doesn't notice. When Alice shuts the door, she hears coins rolling around and finds one on the ground. She leaves it on the dresser and leaves the room. After the party, Virgil says goodbye and leaves the house. Elliot then discovers the coin in his room but is now on the floor and not the dresser. He goes to put it inside a drawer but finds some writing inside of it. He picks it up and it says don't think it, don't say it, written over and over again. He rips the paper out of the drawer and sees the words, "The Bye-Bye Man," carved into the wood. That night, Sasha's friend Kim does a spiritual cleansing of the house because she is a big believer in ghosts. They all joke around and Elliot says he doesn't believe in that sort of thing. To prove it, Kim convinces them to do some sort of candlelight ritual to communicate with the spirits. They all hold hands together and Kim somehow knows secret information about each of the friends. To test her further, Elliot places some keys in a pot and asks her what he hid. Before she answers, Kim suddenly gets frightened and says she doesn't want to do this anymore. She then says something is coming and they are saying don't think it, don't say it. She screams this phrase over and over again, then begins to shake and cover her head. John asks her what not to say, and Elliot remembers what he saw and he says the Bye-Bye Man. Immediately the lights go out and everyone screams. When they switch the light back on, they find Kim curled up in a ball out of fear. That night they all go to bed despite being slightly spooked by the experience. As Elliot and Sasha sleep, steam begins to blow and Elliot wakes up. When he looks across the room, he sees a hooded figure standing with a pale face. He quickly turns a lamp on but sees it is just Sasha's bathrobe that is hung up. He then walks downstairs and hears something in the other room. Elliot slowly creeps in and looks out the window. Sasha then wakes up and enters the room too. They both look out the window and hear a strange sound but they see nothing. The next morning, John drives Kim back to her house. They talk in the car and John sees some maggots crawling in Kim's hair. He looks away and when he looks back they are gone. He gets frightened and tells her to get out because he needs to leave now. Meanwhile, Elliot investigates outside and sees some large claw marks on the exterior of the house. He shows them to John, who thinks it was one of the guys fooling around at the party. Elliot disagrees and says he heard something do it last night, but John is not convinced. Inside the house, John tells Sasha that at least she is clean and then he hurries to wash in the shower. The couple is left confused. Then Sasha begins to cough. She thinks she must be coming down with some sort of sickness, so Elliot makes some tea. Sasha closes her eyes and when she opens them she sees a shirtless John telling her to come here. She looks again and he's gone and she begins to shiver. Night falls and Elliot calls his brother and tells him that his roommates are acting very weird. He thinks they might be falling in love. Then suddenly he hears the strange noise again. He hangs up, then walks outside to look around. Elliot sees nothing, but then hears the noise coming from the basement this time. He creeps down the steps and calls out to see if anyone is down there. He continues walking and discovers more claw marks on the back wall of the basement. As he runs his fingers over them, he hears the sound of coins hitting the floor. Elliot finds one on the ground, but when he bends down to grab it, something crawls out a few feet away. He races up the stairs, but the door slams close. But Sasha and John then open it and ask what is going on. At the table, Elliot yells at them and asks how they didn't hear his cries for help. Sasha then says she thought the house was haunted before and now she really does. John rubs her arm to console her, but Elliot gets angry and they have a small confrontation. In their bedroom, Sasha begins to develop a fever. Sasha then reveals that while he was in the basement she sat down to study. She drifted off, and when she awoke there were many creepy drawings in her notebook that say don't think it, don't say it. Elliot looks through them and Sasha says she doesn't remember doing any of those. She then states that maybe the Bye-Bye Man is real and is coming for them because they said his name. She says she tries to stop thinking about it, but each time it grows bigger and bigger in her brain. Elliot does not think it is real, but Sasha says if it is not, then they are all losing their minds at the same time and the chances of that are slim. That night they lay in their bed and Elliot has a nightmare of a train hitting the three friends. When he awakes, he hears the sound of coins again. He looks over at the storage doorway and sees two glowing eyes staring at him from the dark. He wakes Sasha up, but when she looks at it, it is gone. Elliot then looks at the robe and suddenly a cloaked man walks out and points a long finger at him. He rushes and turns the light on and the figure disappears, but the robe is now on the floor. The next day the couple goes to their college and Elliot enters a library. He uses a computer and does some research on the Bye-Bye Man. Nothing shows up, but when he types in "don't say it, don't think it," there is one match in the library. He finds the file, but inside it is the same phrase written repeatedly. Mrs. Watkins, the librarian, then helps him and she too says the Bye-Bye Man out loud. In their research, they read about a teenager in 1969 who killed his own family and others. When he was questioned why he did it, he responded saying, "The Bye-Bye Man made me do it." The news story was going to be published, but it never did because someone named Larry stopped it. Mrs. Watkins then states Larry went on to kill 8 neighbors with a shotgun. We then flash back again and Larry sees the Bye-Bye Man and a creature after his killing spree. He tells him they will not win, then he drinks some poison and dies. Elliot and Mrs. Watkins then realize Larry must have removed the file so no one else would ever read it. Meanwhile, John heads to class and takes a seat in the back. He starts flipping through his photos but sees some old pictures that he doesn't recognize. He closes his eyes because he thinks he is hallucinating. Then he sees a man in a hooded cloak. As he stares at it, the man begins to raise his finger to point at John. In the library, Elliot gets ready to leave, then looks up and sees the Bye-Bye Man sitting across the room. Elliot scribbles over every mention of him in the file and the lights begin to flash. The librarian snaps him out of it and he runs out because he is late. Later, Elliot visits Kim's house and tells her they need her. On the drive, Kim states the more you think about the Bye-Bye Man, the closer he gets. She reveals she has been having the same hallucinations and has heard the same coins rolling. She says they can't let it spread more because everyone dies in the end. As they drive, Kim looks out the window and sees a car crash. Elliot stops and Kim gets out and runs to them. Elliot discovers a bloody hammer in her purse, then gets out and follows. He tells her it's all in her head, but she runs to some train tracks as a train approaches. The conductor tries to stop, but it is too late and Kim is killed as Elliot screams. Soon after, police arrive and Sasha and John pull up. Elliot confirms that the Bye-Bye Man is inside them and he tells them they can't tell anyone else or it will spread. The police then accuse Elliot of chasing Kim with a hammer and causing her to be hit by the train. They also state that Kim's roommate was murdered with a hammer today. Elliot is interrogated, but they eventually set him free when they find Kim's suicide note, which states she killed her roommate and was planning to kill the 3 friends. That night, Elliot gets a call from Mrs. Watkins, who says she has been having strange thoughts since they talked about the Bye-Bye Man. They talk for a minute, and when they hang up we see Mrs. Watkins is holding a bloody knife and has unfortunately just killed her family. Inside the house, Elliot learns that the nightstand belonged to Larry, who killed all those neighbors. He grabs it from his room and carries it out. And we see the robe move. He takes the nightstand into his yard and throws it into the woods. He then visits Mrs. Redmond, who was married to Larry before he died. They chat and she tells him Larry would write "don't say it, don't think it" non-stop so his mind would always be occupied. Mrs. Redmond says that coins and visions of the hound means he is coming. Finally, she says the only option is to kill everyone who knows the name, then turn the gun on yourself. After the meeting, Elliot races home and calls Sasha, but she does not answer. He sees a hallucination of John but speeds up and it disappears. He begins to realize maybe if he is not afraid, the Bye-Bye Man will have no power. He continues to drive, but suddenly runs into Mrs. Watkins, who is standing on the road. She is real and she dies. And it's revealed she was coming to kill Elliot after finishing her family. Back at the house, John and Sasha both begin to have bad hallucinations. When Elliot enters, he finds John stabbing Sasha because he thinks she is Kim. Elliot tackles John and eventually shoots him using a gun from Mrs. Redmond. However, this too was a hallucination and he has actually just shot Sasha. The Bye-Bye Man tricked him into seeing John, but it was really Sasha who was attacking. He cries and holds her and John is still barely breathing. He then sees the hound enter the room and the Bye-Bye Man appears from the wall. It walks towards Elliot and touches his forehead. At the same time, we see Virgil and his family have arrived at the house and ring the doorbell. Elliot runs down the stairs and screams at them to go away, but Virgil says no. The Bye-Bye Man then opens the door and Elliot covers his mouth so he doesn't say the name. Virgil pleads to know what is happening, but Elliot says he won't let them catch it. He then looks up and sees the Bye-Bye Man and the dog standing on the steps. He begins to say the name and Virgil almost hears him. To save them, Elliot takes his pistol and uses it on himself after telling Virgil he loves him. Virgil screams and looks around and realizes Alice is gone. He finds her in the car and they look up to see the house is on fire. Police surround the house and Virgil and Alice drive home. Alice reveals she found 2 little coins on a table when she went to the bathroom in the woods. Virgil is confused and asks if there is anything else in the table. Alice says there was some writing, but she couldn't read it in the dark. Back at the house, the paramedics pull out John, who is still barely alive. He tries to whisper something and the police detective runs up to him. As the film ends, he whispers the Bye-Bye Man into her ear, and the curse is passed on.